Goody, you dog. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a suddenly eventful episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I'm your host, John Del Rey. Hey, yeah, just a little bit ago, news of Aaron Rodgers being traded to the New York Jets. The trade is finally mercifully done. Oh, Lordy, we're finally here. It's finally arrived. We can now let out this big cathartic breath of relief because this hovering cloud over the Packers that has been the Aaron Rodgers trade is finally complete. And you know what? The Packers did pretty well for themselves. So I'm going to be going through all of that trade details, the what's getting swapped for what and who doing what. And then I'm going to go a little bit abbreviated version now of what the Packers' top 30 visits were, who's included, what it means, what does it mean for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because the draft is also very thankfully this week. So let's dive right in. Yes, Aaron Rodgers, his career with the Green Bay Packers is officially going to be coming to a close probably within the next 24 to 36 hours. Brian Gudekunst did get up to a podium about 10 minutes after the tweets from Rappaport and Schefter all broke out. Now, this was not a press conference to talk about the trade. This was actually his mandatory draft press conference that all GMs have to do the week of the draft. It just so happens that news just conveniently broke right before Goody headed to a microphone. So, and there, Brian Gudekunst did say, he got asked a lot of questions from the reporters, of course, as should have been the case. They were doing their job, about what is the trade, what does it mean? What's it working out to be? How did this all go about? Have you talked to Aaron, etc.? And we learned a couple things from Brian Gudekunst. One, he has not talked to Aaron Rodgers. He still hasn't talked to Aaron Rodgers. And then two, he dodged nearly every question possible, saying that the trade is not yet finalized. Brian Gutekunst didn't want to pull a Joe Douglas or something to that effect and be like, well, yeah, it's done, like Joe Douglas kind of alluded to a couple weeks ago. He did also say that the trade, with it not being finalized yet, they still got to work out the paperwork, still some things, I's being dotted, T's being crossed, etc. He's probably going to be submitted to the league tomorrow. So 24 to 36 hours from now, we should get notice that this trade is finito. We are done, finally, with this trade. So here are the exact details. The Green Bay Packers are trading to the New York Jets, of course, four-time MVP quarterback Aaron Rodgers. But in addition with that, they also are trading picks 15, their first rounder this year, pick 170, a fifth rounder this year. So Rodgers, pick 15, pick 170. And in return, they're getting the Jets pick 13 this year. They're getting the Jets pick 42 this year. And then they're also getting pick 207 this year, Jets sixth rounder. And then next year, 2024, a second round pick, the Jets second, with a contingency conditional clause put onto it that if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the Jets snaps this year, that becomes the Jets first round pick. And that, out of all of this, is perhaps the most eye-opening aspect. So let's go through detail by detail. First of all, the Green Bay Packers are able to move up 2 spots in the first round. I said a few weeks ago, this pick swap has to be included. For 2 months now, these two teams have gone back and forth, just constantly, exhaustively going through each other's rosters, needs, etc. A long negotiation. And do you really want a team that you're giving an asset to and wants to compete this year, when they know all of your weaknesses, when you know all theirs, do you want them picking 2 picks in front of you? No. So the Packers should exercise some leverage here and get 13 from the Jets, and that's exactly what they did. So pick swap, they're moving up from 15 into 13. Okay, moving on from that, they're also getting pick 42 from the New York Jets, the earlier of the Jets' second round picks. So that sets the Packers up in the second round to have both 42 and 45. Now, those 2 picks together is plenty to get them into the first round. If the Packers want to have a second first rounder this year, they can. Yeah, they still can. Or they can pair 13 with something like 42 and get into the top 10 of the draft as well, if necessary. So Brian Gudekunst did say in his press conference, he did say, if 13 is included in the trade, I must feel it's pretty important. So the Packers wanted 13 here for a reason. Now, does that mean just that they wanted a better draft asset? That if they are going to slide back in the draft, as has been widely talked about given the clientele of this year's draft, that now they have a better asset that someone is going to have to trade into, give more for? Sure, they had the opportunity to get something better, so they took it. But at the same time, this feels like Brian Gutekunst has someone in mind, be it one of the top tackles, be it Jackson Smith and Jigba. It feels like this was purposeful for the Packers to take a player. Now, is 13 enough to get said player? Like, let's talk if it's JSN, which I know some of you are sick of talking about. Well, let's talk hypothetically that it is him or one of the top tackles. Okay? If it's JSN, you just hurdled the Patriots. That's great for your chances of getting JSN. You probably still might need to move up past like the Titans at pick 11 or something to really guarantee your chance of getting JSN. If you want one of the top tackles, it kind of depends. Are you just okay with Paris Johnson, Broderick, whatever, in which case you just enhanced your chances of getting them? Or do you for sure want Paris Johnson? In which case, you're going to have to move up. Probably, boy, his stock's been rumored to be all over the place lately, even as high as number 3, which I really don't see the Packers moving up that high. So nonetheless here, they got a better asset, okay? Along with 42, huge pick in the second round. Then they got basically 170 for 207. It's like the Packers, in order to get 42 and 15 in this year's draft, they gave up 37 picks in rounds 5 and 6. Okay. I don't think anyone's going to be too terribly upset about that, considering what it helped get on the front end of the draft. But then that 2024 pick, and this is what's super interesting. It's been reported pretty widely, including Charles Robinson at Yahoo Sports, amongst others, that the trade has been kind of hindering on this for a while, right? That Brian Gutekunst all along has wanted a guaranteed 2024 first. And the Jets have been saying, well, we'll give you a second that can become a first. If we make the AFC Championship, or if we host a playoff game, or if Rodgers plays another year. And Gutekunst constantly went back and said, no, it needs to be a first, period. And so what they wound up doing here was they basically agreed to a compromise that is incredibly likely to happen. But it does give the Jets a little bit of protection. Okay, so it's the 2024 second of the Jets that can become a first if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the Jets snaps this year. That's about, doing the math, it's like 11 games of the season to get to 65%. So the Jets protected themselves in saying, hey, we're a little afraid to trade for a 39-year-old quarterback. We know he's a lot of money. We got all that. We're good with all that. But he still is 39. And we're a little afraid that he's going to go out there in week 1 and like shatter something and then never play again. So we want a little bit of protection there. But yet it's also incredibly likely that Aaron Rodgers, who's played through a number of injuries, it's been a while since he's had something catastrophic like that, isn't going to play 65%. So the Jets build in just a tiny little cushion of self-protection there. While the Packers, for all intents and purposes, probably get their first round pick out of it in 2024. Very, very strong move. I still see it being a compromise, but much more leaning to the Packers side of the scales than that of the Jets. So that is a massive win. Moving on to some secondary thoughts about this trade here. Again, just to recap the compensation of the trade. The Packers are getting 13, 42, 207, and the 2024 second, which could become a first. The New York Jets are getting 15, 170, and Aaron Charles Rodgers. So those secondary notes. Well, for one, Tom Pelissero is reporting that when the trade goes through, Aaron Rodgers is signing basically a revised contract with the Packers to give the Packers some salary cap relief. Which is wonderful. Like, Don't get me wrong, that's wonderful. We know that the Packers have no money. We know that trading Aaron Rodgers is going to cost them approximately $9.8 million added to their cap, which is part of the reason they have no money. But the thing that I'm not sure about is, how are they going to pull that off exactly? Because when they trade Rodgers, that adding of $9.8 million to their cap is because of dead charges from other bonuses basically in past years that have gotten pushed forward, that now accelerate because he's no longer on the team. How are they going to get relief from money that's already been... I don't know. We got to wait to see the numbers on this one, but Tom Pelissero said that it's going to give the Packers cap relief, not the Jets. And I'm skeptical of that one. Woohoo! If it's true, but skeptical. I'm just not sure how they could work the contracts to do it. If they can, sweet. Give Russ Ball a medal, because I don't know how they're going to do it. But great news. Secondary note, too. The Jets did not include Denzel Mims, Corey Davis, specifically at the wide receiver portion, but they also didn't include anybody else. Whitehead, the safety, Johnson, the edge player, the first-round pick last year that a lot of Packer fans are clamoring for, Clemens, who I fell in love with, like all these different players, none are included. So the Green Bay Packers still have a tremendous need at wide receiver. Not that acquiring one of those from the Jets would have solved the wide receiver problem, but it at least would have been a body, and Corey Davis could have been that vet that we know that they want. So, hasn't happened yet. Now, could the Jets still release Corey Davis and his $10 million salary? Could the Packers still pick him up later in the offseason? Yes. It is still possible that Corey Davis could be a Green Bay Packer, but it's not part of this trade at all. No players besides Aaron Rodgers are included in this trade. Okay? Moving on from that, I talked about moving up to 13 makes JSN, makes different players substantially more likely. Matt Miller, who's a renowned draftnik, he talked about the Packers and buzz building over the last couple of days, last week specifically, that the Packers are one of the teams that have pushed a lot of draft momentum towards JSN. And, Matt Miller was the same guy in 2020 who was pretty adamant about the Packers being in love with Jordan Love. So, there's at least got to be some validity there, right? So, take that for what you will. And then, of course, the trade being finalized probably tomorrow. But, whoa, folks. Aaron Charles Rodgers officially now is not going to be a member of the Green Bay Packers. Look, we'll say goodbye a different time, probably after the draft. But the truth is, Brian Gudekunst has been pretty maligned throughout this whole process. Especially nationally. Look at McAfee, essentially calling Gudekunst stupid, and yet praising Joe Douglas, who has yet to have a winning season as GM. But besides the point. But Aaron Rodgers, heading into the darkness, by his own admission, was 90% retired. He probably was not coming back to Green Bay. And if you want to fault Gudekunst for that by saying, well, Goody hasn't gotten him help for 5 years, I get it. Okay, I get it. But the fact remains that Aaron Rodgers was probably not coming back to the Green Bay Packers at all. And the Packers have essentially taken that, a guy who wasn't going to play for him anymore, and moved him for a pretty good compensation package. If Aaron Rodgers did want to play this year, or he did want to show up to OTAs just to screw the Packers, or that kind of thing, the Packers are going to be on the hook for $60 million this year. If they're going to cut him, it was going to become $100 million. That was never going to happen. But they took a guy who didn't really want to play for them anymore, or who felt like they didn't want him. Whatever. The relationship was done. And they're trading him for a pick swap in the first, a second, what is probably a first next year. That's not little. Remember, 6 weeks ago, I did a video reviewing Brian Gudekunst's trade history. And one of the trades that's kind of pertinent here was Davante Adams. He was not going to play for the Packers anymore. The Packers had exhausted their monetary options and trying to get Davante to play for them. And then he said, I'm only going to Vegas. And yet, Gudekunst got a first and second out of that. And here you have a very similar situation. 39-year-old quarterback Aaron Rodgers only wants to go to the Jets, and yet he still seems to extract what is fair market value. Now, I know you might be saying, like, he's a 4-time MVP. There is no such thing as fair market value. Well, yeah, in that regard, if you only look at it in that singular strain. But bearing in mind that he's 39 years old, has 1 to maybe 2 years left, has the interpersonal relationships have been getting strained, let's make no bones about it, and that contract that he was due, coming off of one of his worst statistical years in years, to come close to fair market value, in my opinion, is a good job by Brian Gudekunst. Let's move on to the draft. So we are going to be talking about that so much more throughout the course of this week. Of course, the draft plan is just like completely different now, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, draft is still happening on Thursday. Jordan Love is your quarterback. So I want to go over the names here that have been associated with the Packers and their top visits. I'm using some material from other Packer people on Twitter, media members, etc. So I've compiled a list of who we believe the 30 people to be that have come and done the top 30 visits for the Green Bay Packers. Now, very quickly, a top 30 visit does not mean that the Green Bay Packers are considering picking said player in the top 30. It just means basically every team has the opportunity to fly 30 guys in so that they can interview them, do different workouts. But these guys can be undrafted potential players like Ted Thompson loved to do. He loved to use top 30 visits to get basically a foot in the door for priority undrafted free agents. And Gudekunst, I think, did that a couple times here. Brian Gudekunst, in his tenure, though, has been much more spread about bringing in potential first rounders, fifth rounders, seventh rounders, and priority undrafted. So, like, that's don't get that mixed up as we begin here. So these are pulled from various sources, predominantly though Tom Silverstein from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, in addition to Bill Huber for Sports Illustrated, and even JJ Leahy on Twitter, who's been tracking all of this along with Paul Brettel and Brian Maffey. So there have been 3 players. I'm going to go like this. At quarterback, you've got Sean Clifford and Tanner Morgan. At running back, you've got Evan Hall, Lou Nichols III, Keaton Mitchell. At wide receiver, Dontavian Wicks, Ryan Miller, Adonicus Sanders, Rashee Rice. At tight end, Dalton Kincaid, Darnell Washington, Josh Weil, Ben Sims, Cameron McDonald. And then widely rumored but not confirmed by anyone that I could find was Michael Mayer. Offensive line, Antonio Maffey, Darnell Wright, Kadeem Telfort. Interior defensive line, so the biggies, Carl Brooks, Scott Matlock, Adebo Ware from Northwestern, Jacqueline Roy. Edge, you've got Keon White, Tyrus Wheat, Will McDonald IV, and then FAU from Kansas State. Cornerback, Tyreek Stevenson. At safety, Jamie Robinson, Quan Martin, Quindell Johnson, and Marte Mapu. And then there's some that they've bred in for local visits because you've got your top 30, right? But then you've also got this category of guys that you can bring in that are already close to your team facility. So like Nick Herbig, who was an edge player for the Badgers, he did a visit. Cole Tucker. It's rumored that Adebo Ware's visit was actually classified as a local visit since he was down in Chicago. So take it with a grain of salt. This is what we believe at this point, but there's not like some official list put out by the NFL or the Packers. So, I mean, that's a really wide spread. All the players that I just called off, that is a wide spread. Some of them are going to be first-round picks. Some of them are not going to be drafted. And Gudekunst really seemed to focus his, let's say, attention with these visits in the middle to late rounds of the draft. Okay? Paul Brettel wrote an excellent article just earlier this week detailing how he believes that these players map out what is actually the blueprint of what the Packers are looking for per what positions got brought in and where those positions are projected to be picked. So he said that round 1 looks pretty clearly right now like offensive tackle, edge, or tight end. Round 2, edge, tight end, interior defensive line, wide receiver, cornerback. Rounds 3-4, tight end, wide receiver, interior defensive line, safety. Rounds 5-7, safety, tight end, quarterback, running back, or offensive line. So, look, these top 30 visits, they do hold meaning. They do. Because the Packers, sure, have they brought in some guys that they're not interested in at all? Yeah, probably. They're playing the game, right? But at the same time, in 2018, 6 of the guys that had visits with the Packers wound up on the Packers. 2019, 3 of them. 2020, 2 of them. 2021, 0. But then 2022, 6 of them. That's, I mean, when you figure you get, like, even including undrafted guys, you get anywhere from, like, 10 to 13 guys on your roster from some affiliation with the draft. Having 6 of them have visits is not small. So there is something to be taken from this. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. Keep in mind, Jay Alexander, when he was picked in 2018, did not have a visit with the Packers. They just talked to him at the Combine. You know, Quay Walker last year did not have a visit. Meanwhile, Devontae Wyatt did. So there's a lot of inconsistencies, very purposefully on the part of the Packers. In fact, Brian Gudekunst in past years has said if he's comfortable with the person that he believes he's going to choose in round 1, why waste a visit on him? And he can get comfortable just from hearing from their coaches, from talking to them at the Combine, etc. Because Jair was just talked to at the Combine. And then I bet Brian Gutekunst walked away from that and said, well, I don't have any concerns. He's our guy. Why bring him in? Why bother? Let's spend the visit on somebody else. I love Jair. I've no concerns about his character. If he's available, we're going to pick him. Same thing must have happened with Quay Walker last year. So, I mean, there's something to be said that it's worthwhile to know who the players were. Let's say that. Does it guarantee that the Packers picks are coming from this pool? No. May it still be enlightening as to the blueprint of the draft? Yes. Whew. What a day, y'all. All right, I'm going to be back later this week. Basically, I'm planning on Wednesday, I'm going to put out a video about, I'm really looking at guys in the draft who do not fit the Packers stereotypes, who may still be picked because of needs that are pertinent to this team. One player I can tell you right now is Will McDonald IV. Players focusing on that area of teams. I'm also going to be putting out kind of a fill-in-the-blank about the Packers draft. I may put that out Thursday morning as a little fun draft prepper. And then, of course, you will see me a ton this coming weekend. Still working out some logistics. Probably going to be going live over the course of the draft, potentially, quite potentially for all 7 rounds. So stick around. I know all of you have plenty of different avenues to consume Packer content. The fact that you carve out just a little bit of time for me really does mean a lot. And if you want to come see me at the draft, I would absolutely love it. So thanks for checking out today's video. I hope you had a great day today. And as always, go Pack Go.